So we're about to talk about the structure of culture, and I've got a couple of videos following this one that will actually go into this in a lot more detail. But I just want to give you a little bit of background information about where the structure of culture has evolved from and why we use it, and highly recommend it as the format for actually working to help get your organizational culture above the line. The actual thinking behind the model was developed by a fellow anthropologist, not that I'm putting myself in the same category as this gentleman at all, because he was prolific and possibly one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers. His name was Gregory Bateson, and although you may not have heard of him, you may have heard of his wife, Margaret Meads, another anthropologist. Gregory Bateson came up with some really interesting thinking that determined that there are different logical levels that human beings apply when we are thinking about working or solving problems. And although he didn't actually say these words, Albert Einstein has a fairly famous quote that kind of captures the thinking and the idea that Gregory Bateson was talking about when he referred to logical levels of thinking. Einstein said we cannot solve our problems at the same level of thinking that created them in the first place. What he means by this is that when we come across a challenge or a situation that we're trying to resolve or fix or improve upon, we often have to shift our thinking to a different way of thinking from a different perspective, or using different resources or angles in order to find a solution that will actually work. The same can be said when we're thinking about culture. If you want to fix, for example, a behavioral challenge you're having in culture, it usually makes a lot more sense not to address the behavior head on, because people will often find that you're challenging them and they may resort to being or feeling defensive about what you're saying. So by finding different ways of meeting and addressing the challenge in a culture of, say, behavior, we suddenly find we have access to different logical levels or different layers of culture that can actually help resolve the behavioral issue quicker and for greater ease for the person that's on the receiving end of the work that we're hoping to do. So when we move on to the next video now, talking about the structure of culture, the thinking that comes behind it is exactly what I've just referred to in terms of Gregory Bateson. It's also been developed further and applied to phenomenal results in the field of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, by a gentleman referred to as Robert Dilts, and he's one of the leading pioneers in some of the thinking of neuro-linguistic programming, which is all about neuro being about the mind. Linguistic is how we take thinking and convert it into language, and programming, if you like, is our habits. So it's our thinking and communicating habits and how they influence performance. So if you think about that in cultural terms, thinking and communicating the habits we form has a critical role to play in terms of how our culture is operating and how we can also support it to change and evolve to the levels that we aspire to.